What's up, weirdos? So, today I decided to do a little bit of a story time. I figured that I could kind of explain the circumstances that led to me being blind in my right eye and kind of the reason that it drifts, which I'm sure you guys have noticed by now. It's a not so fun story, but it was a pretty substantial part of my life, so I figured I might as well share it because why not? Just a warning, I am going to be showing some pictures. I'm going to be showing a picture or two of me in the hospital. I'm going to be showing a couple of pictures after that, and then a close-up of my eye from today. I had my sister help me take it, so thank you, Lynn. I wouldn't say any of them are too graphic, but you never know what might be triggering to somebody else, so if that's something that may bother you, feel free to skip this video. Like, I won't be offended if you don't watch it. I just figured I would share it because my eye is a very important part of my identity, and I'm not really ashamed of it. Sometimes I'm self-conscious with the way it drifts. It does really bug me. Bug on me. I'm also going to be talking about a pretty decent car accident that I was involved in, and I know that that can be very triggering for some people. Again, if you're not in the right headspace to watch this, that's totally fine. Also, quick side note, I know that the lighting isn't the greatest and there's a lot of background noise. I'm sitting in our basement living room filming this, and I'm also surrounded by animals. I have a bird over here and then a bird directly in front of me on the other side of this desk thing. And then there are all the dogs down here too, so you might hear them running around and playing and the occasional noise from the bird. So I'm sorry about that. Hopefully it's not too bad. Anyway, let's just jump right into it. So it was the first or second week of my sophomore year, so very early September. It was about September 13th, I think, somewhere around there. And I was going with my then PSR worker to some kind of an event. I can't exactly remember what it was. We were driving, and I very specifically remembered that the song we were listening to on the radio was the Devil Went Down to Georgia, which, great song, love that song. And we were going to make a right-hand turn at an intersection. I was looking kind of at the radio because we had just restarted the song because the one we had listened to was the radio version, so it bleeped out, that one curse word at the end of the song. And my PSR worker had then come and was like, no, we need to listen to, the actual song because that one's so much better. I'm like, yeah, I agree. So we had just put that on, and I was, kind of looking at the stereo. And then I remember just, this pause of a moment. And then I remember looking up, and and this is the part that gets weird, because it happened over 10 years ago. So I can't really remember exactly what I saw when I looked out the window. But the next thing I knew was I was staring at the airbag of the car. Now, in that moment, being 15 years old, almost 16, I was about 3 months away from being 16 at the time. Being that young, I instantly, I was kind of panicking, but not really. I didn't really know that I was panicking almost. I just remember my PSR worker reaching over and grabbing my hand and just saying, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And while they were apologizing to me, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking in my head, it's all right, it's okay. I don't know if I said that out loud in the moment, but I was thinking it in my head, while at the same time, with my right hand, I'm trying to get the door open because, there's smoke, it felt like so much debris everywhere, and, I just needed to get out of the car. But the thing is I couldn't get the door open. And so what I ended up doing is, because I could hear at this point voices outside of the car, and so I just started, banging on the window with my hand, and, just, I'm freaking out. My PSR's worker was freaking out. And the people around us do manage to get her door open. And they managed to get her out of the car. They weren't able to get my door open, so they had to help me out through her door. And I remember the intersection that we were at, on the other side of it, there was this big grassy hill because it was a park. So the intersection on, two sides of the road were cornering this park. And so they went and they laid us down over there. while we waited for the ambulances, which were there pretty quick from what I remember. And at this point, I'm kind of in a confused sort of daze. I'm not really sure what's going on. People are, talking, like there's a lot of people talking. I'm not really understanding what they're saying. One of the few things that really sticks out is that somebody had used my phone to call my dad. And, he's talking to me, he's asking me if I'm okay, and all this stuff. And I'm just kind of like looking around, like very much in a daze because, what just happened. It's not even really sunk in yet that I was in a car accident. But as I'm just kind of like looking around, hearing my dad talk, saying he's on his way, he'll be right there, and the paramedics are showing up, I hear people saying, like, oh, they're commenting about, like, oh, your eye is bleeding, like all this other stuff. Oh, look, you have so many cuts on your chest and stuff. And, for me, like, the only thing I really remember is I don't remember being in a lot of pain at that point. I do remember kind of a watery sensation in this eye. Like, I kept blinking because it felt like there was something stuck in my eye. The next thing I remember is that my PSR is getting loaded into one of the ambulances. And then the paramedics are asking if I want to ride in the ambulance with them or if I wanted to ride to the hospital with my dad. And I remember saying, I want to go with my dad. Because for me, it was about that familial comfort. Like, I was confused, probably still in a fair state of shock. So we get to the ER, and I remember starting to be very scared at this point because they pack a bunch of gauze and this, like, weird, stiff, like, eye patch over my eye. And, like, that was confusing me because I'm like, okay, there must have, like, maybe I got a bunch of cuts around it or something, like maybe my eyelid got cut. I'm not sure. I know that they did tests, but I don't actually remember them doing the test. I feel like I blocked a lot of stuff out from this time because it was very chaotic and very stressful and scary. But I remember very distinctly that while we were waiting for those results, it was me and my dad in the room. He was kind of trying to, like, make me laugh because, again, I was freaking out. And so what he was doing was he was standing in one place and then he'd step over here and he would make me follow him with my eyes just to kind of like get me to laugh, trying to make a game of it, trying to cheer me up or keep me calm. And I remember one of the nurses, because we were directly across from the nurse's station, she saw him doing it and she came over and she's like, hey, you have to stop that. It's going to cause further damage to her eye. You need to knock that off. And so, he kind of stopped, and, like, that confused me, because I'm like, what do you mean further damage? What's going on? It hadn't really sunk in how serious this was going to be for me yet, I don't think. But when it did start sinking in was when the doctor came in and said that, hey, we got the images back from your eye, and yes, there was a piece of the dashboard that went into her eye, and we have to do surgery to get it out. Now, I do have some pictures of the first night that I was in the hospital. Not of the eye itself, but just of me kind of like, there was one point where I was showing kind of the cuts on my upper chest. Again, nothing graphic, but you can also see like the bandages on the eye and stuff like that. So I'll put them up somewhere on the screen now. I don't know where, but they'll be up here somewhere. But yeah, anyway, the doctor is explaining that yes, a small piece of the dashboard had gone into my eye when the airbag deployed. Because from what I was told and I understood, the airbag in the passenger side, a piece of the dash was supposed to drop down and the airbag would release. But that didn't happen. There was a malfunction, and so it basically like kind of blew through the dashboard, and a bit of that projectile went into my eye. Now, the doctor that had done these initial tests admitted that he did not feel comfortable going in to retrieve that piece of dash. He was worried that he was going to mess up the eye, and so he called in a specialist to come in and do the surgery. The next thing that happened was that they moved me up into a room because I had to stay overnight. And I remember that as being one of the longest nights of my life because I could not sleep. I was so tired, but I could not sleep. I was uncomfortable. I was nervous and worried. But I did eventually manage to fall asleep. and they woke me up very early the next morning saying, "Hey, it's time." And so, they go and they put me under, and I'm not really like too anxious at that point. I think I was more just too tired to be anxious. And then the next thing I know is I'm waking up back in my room. And at this point, I am on my stomach and I am laying right on the left side of my face. And they tell me, listen, you can't move from that spot. You have to stay laying down on your left side at least. Like you have to keep your head in that position. I remember just wanting to go back to sleep because again, at this point I'm still just utterly exhausted. And so, they're trying to get me to drink water and stuff like that to be like, okay, come on, recovery. I remember not being able to really keep anything down for the first little bit. And they tried at least 2 or 3 times. And then this goes into another part where it's very fuzzy for me and I don't really remember a whole lot. The first few months after that initial surgery are very dark and fuzzy and kind of mixed together because I was on quite a few painkillers and different meds and all the stuff that kind of kept me sedated for the first 2 months after that surgery. And the reason for that was one, because of the pain, but also because I had to stay consistently laying with my head in that initial position of the left side of my head being down. And the doctor, the reason he gave for that was because the nerves, in order to go in and get the piece of dashboard from my eye, a lot of the nerves and stuff were severed from it and from them going in to get it. And so his reasoning was he was trying to make it to where the eye itself, or more nerves than absolutely necessary, didn't end up dying. If not in a visual sense, at least in a living part of myself sense, if that makes sense. I feel like I've said sense 500 times in the last 20 seconds. Anyway, those first few months, I had 4 drops into this eye in the morning, and I also had those kind of at noon, so midway through the day, and then I had those at night before I went to bed as well. And I also had to keep my eye covered for the first while. Again, it's kind of groggy, and I think I have a picture of that. I'm not sure. Of me like laying down on the couch with like the thing over my eye, which I can put up here again too. The only time I was really able to like get up was when I was going to the bathroom or going to a doctor. I had a lot of really frequent doctors the first like year and a half, 2 years after this happened. I actually had to have, I think, 2 more surgeries on the eye, just to kind of go back in and shave down some scar tissue. I know I had LASIK on it once for the scar tissue. The scar tissue became like almost a recurring thing. One of the things that he also wanted to try and do during that first like year and a half, 2 years after the eye itself became stable enough that he wasn't worried that me being up and moving around was going to, make the eye itself die, was he was trying to recover as much vision as possible. But also, a part of it was the rehabilitation of now being blind in that eye and having to overcome the depth perception and the balance issues, because that was a huge part of my life after that. I remember for the first little bit, they had me in these really gaudy glasses, which again, I have a picture and I can show you. And that was for 2 reasons. One, to block out the sun, because this eye's pupil no longer dilates. It no longer has that function. It is very sensitive to sunlight, and I get really bad migraines. But the other function was also just to protect myself from bumping into walls. It was to protect that eye. When I did eventually go back to school, because I was out for a few months, but when I did eventually go back, I did have to wear those glasses. And I remember arguing with one of my teachers because they're like, hey, you can't wear those, because he thought they were just sunglasses and that I was just being, one of those kids. And I had to explain to him, like, no, I have a doctor's note. These are a medical thing. Like, and I hated being that girl. The girl with the sunglasses, the girl that was blind in one eye. Like, it was very hard as, a 16-year-old to kind of deal with that. A main part of those glasses was because I had no depth perception and my balance wasn't that good after the accident. I was constantly bumping into walls, or I would go to reach for something and my hand would be here and the object would be here, and I would go to reach it for it thinking I'm on it, and I would just completely miss because it looks closer to me. And even now, I still kind of struggle with this. There's some things to where I can't tell how far away they are, really. I've gotten a lot better at estimating how far away things are, but back when this first happened, I had no idea, and it was really a huge struggle for me. I'd have to have my dad take me for walks outside just so that way I could practice walking because everything just got so difficult. Like, it's weird how much you don't realize that losing one eye, like the vision in one eye would affect that, but it really did. Eventually, I did get better at it. I did kind of readjust to the way I live now. It's just difficult then to kind of have to relearn that at the age of 16. Anyway, that's kind of the story of how I lost the vision of my eye and the circumstances around it. It wasn't a happy time in my life, but it was a time in my life that shaped me to be kind of the person who I am today. Later, I might make a separate video on how that experience kind of shaped the reason why it took me so long to learn how to drive and, my anxiety in driving, because it really does still impact me in that way. I almost forgot to show the pictures of my eye as it is currently. I had, again, my sister helped me with these, so thank you, Lynn. I'm going to throw them up on screen right now. And as you're looking at it, you can see that in my blind eye, it looks like there are two pupils. But that bottom hole is actually where the piece of dashboard went into my eye, and they had to go back in and get it out. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna get off my little story time, soapbox, whatever thing now, and I'm gonna go crochet something. So I will see you guys in the next video.